Right. Hello there, everyone. Welcome to the World of Momos podcast. And on this episode of Reflections and Reactions, we have Basil the Great with us. Now, it's an odd one today because I'm doing audio only, and I haven't done audio only before. Although when I started doing these conversation, I actually wanted it audio only, like give a sort of like a radio vibe, but it didn't work out that way. So, but this one will do audio only. And what we're going to talk about today is a bit leading up to the UK elections. So we're going to talk about UK elections, and we're going to talk about SDP, as Social Democrat Party, that I'm myself a member of. So we're going to talk about them, and we're going to talk about Basil himself. So let's have Basil introduce himself. Hi there.
Hi, Momus. Yes, I am Basil the Great on Twitter. It was, yeah, it's a weird
Do you
moniker.
find it odd saying it out loud yourself
I,
that you're
I
Basil the
do.
Great?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't join Twitter for any particular reason other than just to kind of pass the time.
Mm,
And yeah, I chose a moniker just from an old Disney movie that I enjoyed. It
yeah.
wasn't. I get Basil Brush a lot, which is absolutely fine. Or Basil Faulty, but
Yeah.
no, it's Basil the Great Mouse Detective is what came. What came to mind when I was doing. I don't know what took me over when I did it, but it is what it is. So yeah, I joined Twitter. It was late last year. I have been on Twitter before that, but this time I made sure to go anonymous. And yeah, I'm happy to explain why if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, because that is the reason why we're doing audio only. So that would be really great. Yeah, just go ahead. Let us know
Yeah,
why are you anonymous.
yeah. So again, it does feed back into politics. So I originally was on Twitter some years ago. This is pre-COVID, and
Mm,
yeah, I was on as me, face and everything, and I ended up. Uh, I didn't take Twitter too seriously. It was seen as I kind of thought of it a bit like Facebook. You think it's friends
mm-hmm.
you're talking to. You think it's all decent people, and then obviously, yeah, I was just talking to some random person one day who was talking about going on puberty blockers for
Mm,
transitioning and all the rest of it. And I'll be honest with you, I was in my infancy in terms of understanding how that worked and all the rest of it. And
mm,
I just suggested to the poor guy, I was like, perhaps you should maybe speak to someone, maybe speak to a therapist or something, and try something else before you go down the medication route. And to be honest with you, it wouldn't matter what the concern was. I would say that advice to anyone, depending on what they had wrong with them, or what issue they were dealing with.
I mean, the
And
GP would should be saying that anyways. So.
yeah, and then a group of activists attacked. They said, you're
Mm,
genociding us and you're denying his existence and all of this stuff. And I didn't have a clue what it meant, so I just shut the laptop down, forgot about it,
mm,
disappeared for a weekend. And then I came back into work on the Monday morning, and it was, Basil, can you come and visit HR? And
mm,
yeah, you go upstairs and they've got just reams of this stuff, all printed off, and you're just like,
yeah.
wow. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm very lucky in the sense that I do a job that actually, I'm not easily replaceable. Um, and they kind
Mm,
of said, you know, we just don't want the noise. They kind of give
mm,
me a hint and a wink. And from
mm,
that moment on, I was just like, well, I am done with Twitter. And sure enough, I went back on and I'd been mass reported as well. So I got something like a 3-month suspension. This was under the old
mm,
regime, Jack Dorsey or whatever his name was. Yeah, and I got the 3 months suspension. I just said, oh, I'm done with it then. And I left it. And then, went through COVID, all of that, years and years later. And then I just got bored one day, decided to come back, thought I'll be anonymous this time for my own sanity, so I don't have to worry
mm.
about that stuff again. And here I am.
Yeah, I mean, I have been talking about this anonymous way of doing things with other people as well. I was talking with Tim Davies as well because he gets the wrong side of anonymous accounts, right? Which I get as well, which is why I don't like a lot of anonymous accounts, is because they are anonymous, they think they can attack, which you would have got as well with your gender critical views. A lot of anonymous accounts would have attacked you uh,
Yes.
when you
Well,
were like, yeah.
what?
So so I understand both sides of things, right? Because like you, I think so I went through even more of an investigation at work, last year for being Islamophobic, uh, given that I'm an ex-Muslim, and transphobic, and also a racist on top of everything and stuff like that. And it was just, I think so, it was because I was not white, right? Because I was not a white male, um, I was able to fight it, even though it took a lot out of me, and it was a lot of back and forth. It was a full investigation and everything like that. I think so that is the only saving grace um, that I had, and which is a sad thing. So I can understand like why people go anonymous. Um, is because but I wouldn't want people to just completely disappear, right? Like the silent majority become silent because they've been scared into not talking. So at least even if they're anonymous, they're out there. So eventually we have enough of a consensus so people don't have to hide their face, so that people, if they are being hounded down on social media and stuff, that it doesn't affect their work. But yeah, I do understand it, and it's just the troll aspect, I think so, of anonymous accounts. That's what I hate.
Yeah, I can understand that, and obviously, they see my account and they look at it, and obviously it's a little cartoon mouse
Hmm.
avatar, and it's it looks like a troll account, and I get it. And at first, obviously, I would get kicked from everything.
Hmm.
There would be no chance I was even allowed to listen, never mind speak in Twitter Spaces and so on. But once you get into Twitter Spaces, which is what is my big thing,
Hmm.
talking to people, not just typing at them. Obviously,
Hmm.
you get an extra level of understanding for the person
Yeah.
you're speaking with, and it's that extra level, and you gain trust, and obviously, then that's it moves from there. So the, look, I understand. You get the good and the bad from it, right? You get the
Yeah.
anonymity, which is what you need, but you also get the crap that will come with it, and that's absolutely fine. It's a decision that each person has to make. But what I will say, to your point, is it's an damning indictment of the country and the state of the country that we live in,
Hmm.
that so many people feel they have to be anonymous online just to say things that are absolutely common, said up and down this country every single day, but maybe's not by the more liberal left media circles in London, BBC, etc. Um, and yeah, as you've explained yourself, Islamophobia being a big one. But there
Yeah.
are other things as well, such as gender critical views, such as wanting, I've made this point before, I don't understand why, me saying I would like immigration levels, it were the 1990s, how somehow I'm far right, and yet the people who want mass, uncontrolled, unhousable, unserviceable levels of immigration,
Unchecked.
unchecked, they somehow are the moderates. I've never understood that, why that's changed, why that Overton window switched, but that is the case. And while that is the
And
case,
like
I'll have
where
to
does
stay
it go to
anonymous.
then? Where does it go to then? Like now they're hounding us on social media. But tomorrow they're gonna be hounding us in pubs then, right? So this is this is not the way to go to. And when I came into England 14 years ago, that is when I became even more outspoken against Islam and stuff, because I thought I was in a safe country, right? I thought I was in a country where I can say whatever the hell I want, as long as it's legal, as long as it's not like outrageous. But and this is why I wasn't anonymous, because I was like, well, it's probably why you weren't anonymous before as well, before you started getting attacked, um, while most people weren't. And it has increasingly for 4 or 5 years has become the case where people have to. But I understand, this is why I do interact with a lot of anonymous accounts still. I don't have that much of a hard line against anonymous account as some people do. But I can understand as well, because as you might have seen, I receive death threats as well from anonymous accounts. And those are the anonymous accounts. Some of them are, they say something nice or whatever at first, as the recent was once trying to. And because of how I was brought up, I always respond to people as much as I can, because it seems like bad manners to not respond to people. and then they start giving you death threats and stuff like that. So I think so if it's done so much, people just become jaded with accounts. But I think so, yeah, perspective needs, people need to have perspective.
The,
But
the,
we'll
the,
move on from that though.
the sad thing is, though, Momus, there is actually a really
Mm,
easy way to fix it, right? There's a
yeah.
really easy way to fix it, which is, you should have um, social media set up in a way where you can either be anonymous or you
Mm,
can have yourself registered with your identification as a real person.
yeah.
And you should have the option to allow anonymous accounts or to allow identified people only. So you can only see the two sides of it. However, there should be a go between. And I think the go between should be
Yeah.
for anonymous accounts who want to buy the right to be in the identified Twitter but only be anonymous. You should pay
Mm,
a premium fee. I've said it should be something quite high, something like £100, okay, as
mm.
a one off payment. And then what it should be is if you get permanently banned for doing something horrific, the person who you did it to gets a cut of that fee, and you are still banned,
Yeah,
and you
sort of
lose
like
the
a
rest.
security deposit, right?
Exactly, and that would it would
Yeah.
regulate people's behaviour, because at the end of the day, you
Yeah.
wouldn't want that person getting a cut of your
But
money, but
that's the
also
thing. That's the
you would have to
thing.
pay again. Yeah,
They wouldn't want that, right? Because Twitter's, a lot of social media, but especially Twitter, is run on the back of trolls, right? The engagement is run on outrage metrics. That's from the legacy media that still we haven't got over, and I see that a lot in new media as well. People pushing the outrage and stuff. Even the people that I like or are my friends who do that as well. uh, you know but some people overdo it, and they need these trolls because these trolls or the bot farms and stuff like that, they create engagement and stuff. So like you said, you're right in saying that there are many ways of how you can control it, but it's
absolutely.
just not beneficial for them to do it.
Absolutely, and that's why if Elon Musk wants to take a stand and say that he's going to be different from the rest, it would take someone like him to do it. I'm not seeing any
Yeah.
evidence of that so far, but you're absolutely right. I mean,
No.
even with mainstream media nowadays, the reason why it's so terrible but yet so watchable is because it's based around 24-hour news media, which we were never meant to consume as
Yeah.
humans, and it's about click farming and clickbaiting. And that's why you'll never have nuanced discussions. You always get the craziest people who, even if they did change their views, they're not
Hmm.
encouraged to do so. They're incentivized, and we all know who these people are. I'm not going to name names, but
Yeah.
they are incentivized to say the most hideous, the most horrendous
Hmm.
things that you can possibly get away with within the bounds of Ofcom regulations. And that's why they
Hmm.
always keep getting invited back. Because if you wanted to have a serious, nuanced debate about, an actual issue, no one would watch, unfortunately.
Oh no, no! I have actually seen this. That they get paid for their appearances, right? So they are told to take up opposite position. And the better you are at taking the opposite position, whether you believe in it or not, the more that you'll get booked on. So that's like even GB News do that. Especially GB News do that as well,
Yeah.
as well as everyone else. So it's the same metrics they use. And regarding that 24/7 news, right? Like I remember a time because I'm not that old, right? But I'm like in my late 30s, right? But I still remember a time where an elder person would tell me off for reading the newspaper every day. It's like, oh, you get all worked up, like you don't need to read the newspaper every day, right? But and now we have news every single second. You know, it's just it's a bit too much for people to be consuming news in that sense that they actually lose perspective of their communities, and the news, the actual news that are with their neighbors and stuff, what's happening with their neighbors, and they just become so disconnected, just become global blobs on, more worried about what's happening thousands of miles away, and less worried about, like, whoever down the road needs the help. So
Yeah.
there is that element.
Well, what's even worse is that as time has gone on, we've slowly cultivated news to be what we want to hear as opposed to what we need to
Hmm.
hear.
Hmm.
So we used to pick a newspaper, and people would pick the newspapers that they liked reading the most, right? Which would often be things that agree with them. It's why certain political commentators do so well with their book sales, because they literally they write books that tell people that what they believe is correct, and then they back it up with maybe statistics that benefit their argument but don't reveal the full picture. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So the problem with social media obviously is that there's an algorithm at play always, and it's you cultivating your own news feed. You ask most people nowadays where they get their news from. They might go to the occasional website such as the BBC, but even they have a bias, as we all know. And
Mm.
unfortunately, the rest of it will come from social media. And unless you are actually aware of this, and listen, I try to do it. I'm not
Mm.
the best at it, but I do try to kind of follow accounts that I don't always agree with, or at least don't agree with on everything. And it's to try and see other perspectives, right? I stick around in left wing chat groups, right wing chat groups, because you want to see.
Mm.
Particularly, it's interesting when you see a news story come out how each group deal with it differently. But what is
Yeah.
also interesting is that you've got to remember these two chat groups, all they're doing is seeing themselves. And so it
Mm.
always reinforces their opinion. And that also it plays into ego, right? They absolutely think that they're correct. This is why when you go into debates with a lot of these people who are just average people, again, I've got nothing against them personally, but you'll find that they clearly are hearing things for the first time that they've never heard before because they've never considered another perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving on from that, SDP, right?
Yes, the Social
So
Democratic Party.
yes. So before we talk about SDP or anything related to it, tell me why you joined and when you joined it, actually.
Oh, so do you want the full story or do you want the
Yeah.
short story? The
Yeah.
full
Go ahead.
story.
Full story.
Well, okay. So I grew up in the northeast of England. I
Hmm.
grew up in a former mining town. That
Hmm.
I'll be honest with you, if you looked at it when I was growing up in the early 90s, looked like a bit of a. It was like a war had happened there almost. There was so much of the town that was just empty, desecrated, and I didn't know any different, right? So
Hmm.
there was a lot of it just covered over where there was former mines,
Hmm.
but also all the infrastructure related to the mines had been knocked down. Little bits of buildings left where it hadn't been knocked down properly. There was also
Hmm.
one of the mines was still accessible if you knew how to get into it. So you could literally play in it. And
Well.
it was a weird town to be a part of. I'm pleased to say it's actually pulled itself together a little bit now, but there was the whole town infrastructure was based around the coal mining communities,
Hmm.
and growing up, you were brought up under no circumstances to despise Tories. And by that, I don't mean Tory party politicians. I don't mean Tory members. I mean
Yeah.
even the voters. You were brought up
Hmm.
to despise them. You were brought up to know that the Labour Party was your bread and butter, and we didn't just vote for them. We weighed in on them. We were activists for them. Every single house I remember walking by, it would always have Labour Party propaganda out the front. The pamphlets, the signs, the posters in the windows. You would occasionally see a Conservative poster, and it wouldn't be long until its windows were put through. I am not
Hmm.
joking. That was the environment I grew up in. Um, and yeah, that was just the way it was. And so I got to university. I was on the student union council, which at the time wasn't basically party political. It was very. It used to blur between Labour and Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats at the time,
Yeah.
you've got to remember, had a lot of sway with students because they were promoting the idea of free tuition,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a big deal. And then obviously 2010 come round, my first election that I could vote in, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to vote Liberal Democrat. I know I've been brought up to vote Labour. I'm going to do the as rebellious as I would be at the time. I will vote
Hmm.
Liberal Democrat. I will vote for Nick Clegg, and I thought I'd do it on the basis that he'd give me a free tuition at university.
Yeah.
Um, now,
I
what
think
a
a lot
welcome.
of people voted for that reason.
Yeah, what a welcome to politics that was. So
Yeah.
obviously that didn't happen. Quite the opposite. But yeah, it obviously didn't happen. There was a massive reaction, and then all of a
Hmm.
sudden, the only people you saw on student campuses anywhere were the Labour Party.
Hmm.
Quite quickly, and they were heavily involved. And so my role on the student union was one of I was very grounded. I always have been that way. I took a year out to work before I went to university. I never got anything given to me growing up. It's not to complain.
mm,
I'm quite pleased for that because, if I wanted a car, I had to go and work for it, and that's what I
mm,
did. I took a year out before I started university, so I had a big grounding, a lot more than other people my age did, in
mm,
terms of how the real world works. And I'd made mistakes, and that is 90% of the time how we learn. And yeah, I'd really matured a little bit more than what the other people at university had, and
mm,
um, and because of that, I realised, I wasn't really impressed by the pie in the sky ideas a lot of Labour activists would do. This kind of, you can see it now with the Israel Gaza conflict. It's not uncommon to hear this discussed at lower levels of government, such as councils and stuff, where it's really got none of their business. I mean, it's barely our business in the UK as a whole, but it's they've got that view that they can kind of debating something, having the conversation changes the world somehow. But that is common amongst Labour Party activists, I noticed. However, I was much more grounded in the things that we could achieve. I was much
mm,
more interested in community and getting money for certain events, which is what my thing was, right? I was in the bar trade at the time with the Students' Union, student bars. I wanted to try and get events on for people, freshers, that
mm,
kind of stuff. So you have to tag along. And slowly you get absorbed by the Labour Party blob and you make friends, don't you? And you kind of say, oh, it's cool to hang out with them. This is a Labour
mm,
youth night, you know what I mean? Let's go out together and stuff. And all of a sudden you get caught up in it. And next thing you know, I was part of the Labour youth movement.
mm,
Um, it was really fun. I'm not going to deny it. Especially the years between 2010 and 2015, we were kicking lumps out of the Tories. We were in an incredibly safe Labour areas, which was
mm,
really fun because you were always right. Even if you were wrong, you had people on your side.
mm,
It was just great fun, and you get involved in the kind of support for Ed Miliband at the time, and I can't remember who the cabinet was now, but it was all those people, all those good people who we were kind of involved with. And whether you knew what you believed at the time or not, I mean, my views were completely different to what they are now.
yeah,
But you thought you were doing good. That's what it was, and this is why I know so much about how the left wing think, because I've been through the mill and I was one and I've witnessed it all. And when you see, like, the kind of, it's not left and right to them, it's almost right and wrong to them. I thought that too. Do you know what I mean? So
mm,
I can understand that perspective a little bit. But as time went on, up comes the Scottish referendum, and I loved canvassing. I loved hearing people's ideas, suggestions, and I went into Scotland and spoke to people. I used to do roundtables with people in pubs and community centres,
mm,
and just kind of find out what people were interested in. People love to tell you their stories. They love to tell you what they think
yeah,
about the world, especially when they've had a drink or two. And yeah, I would sit there and listen to them. And obviously, for me, I was brought up in a predominantly Irish Catholic background in England.
mm,
But we always were very proud of being British and
yeah,
having Irish connections. I was always brought up to see all of these islands in this northwest corner of Europe as one people's.
mhm,
Um, and a few rebellions aside with Ireland and the problems there,
mhm,
I still don't feel a stranger when I go to Ireland. And that was the way I was brought up, right? And when you're brought up in that background and a love and respect for all corners of these islands and a realization that I don't feel like a foreigner or a stranger when I go to them, I just wanted to see our country stay together.
mm,
And the Scottish referendum, I went up to find out what was going on. I learned it inside out, all of the debating points, the topics, etc. And yeah, that was a big changing for me because you end up speaking to a lot of conservatives, and the border regions in particular. And you realise that Tories are not to be despised. They are actually great people, just like there are some left wing people that are great too, and it's all about breaking down those barriers and those
how
perspectives.
how
And
did you how did you feel when you found out that Tories are actually human beings and decent human beings as well? Did you feel like I'm asking for a reason? Did you feel a sense of betrayal from labor or from your how you were brought up or the area or that sort of thinking that they made you hate someone, they made you hate your own countrymen basically just because they thought a bit differently? Did you
yeah,
feel a sense of betrayal?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because
Hmm.
I'd already been through the betrayal. I jumped ahead a little bit
Okay.
in my story, I guess. I already
Hmm.
felt a little bit of betrayal, right? It's kind of like when you discover that Santa's not real for the first time. Around the age
Hmm.
of 11, I realized that I don't believe in God. And
Hmm.
from a youth, I was brought up a truly believing Catholic. I went to school mass every Sunday, and sometimes on Wednesdays. I can't remember
Hmm.
why that was. But yeah, we did. I literally believe the Bible inside and out. And obviously, one day you read the Bible, and don't get me wrong, by the way, the Bible's
Hmm.
greatest hits are phenomenal, right? It's kind of like I
Hmm.
always compare it to like ABBA. Like everybody loves ABBA Gold, right? The greatest hits, but ABBA's B sides maybe not so much,
Hmm.
right? And it's the same with the Bible, right? Easter, Christmas, Noah, Moses, all the big ones, all the biggies. Everyone loves them. But then when it gets into the weeds of it, and you start talking about tattoos and homosexuality and eating shellfish and you start
Hmm.
questioning it, right? And why is there no dinosaurs mentioned? And you start questioning it all, right? And it,
Hmm.
it started to unpick for me, and that was a real realization. And I do advise this to young people every time I speak to them, because I'm getting to that age now yourself, Mom, as you said yourself, where people
Hmm.
start looking at you as a bit more of an adult, and that you're not young
Hmm.
anymore, and they do ask you for advice. And I say to them, the best advice I could ever give a young person is change your mind on something. Once you realize that the arrogance of youth is holding you back, and that if you
Hmm.
change, it's okay to change your mind on something, everything becomes up for grabs in terms of rethinking stuff. So yeah, I learned from that, and then obviously the Tories thing. Well, as you get into your teens, you rub shoulders with these people. It's
Hmm.
not a case of despising them as people, but it's a case of always thinking, well, they always look down on us, and
Yeah.
they're very selfish. But all that's just not true. And
Hmm.
I quickly learned it, and I always had a penchant for trying to see things from other people's perspectives. And so, no, I didn't feel betrayed. At the end of the day, you have to learn your history, and you have to be proud to understand where your parents and grandparents are coming from. The miners'
Hmm.
strikes was brutal on my family. Just the stories I've been told, that's a whole podcast in itself.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane, and I can understand why you'd have that visceral hatred in your heart for people. But I just couldn't bring myself to follow in that footsteps. And I've got to
Yeah.
be honest, I think everyone's kind of mellowed a little bit, but
Hmm.
certain individuals, I've got to say, certain individuals will never let that go for certain other
Yeah.
individuals,
I
scabs and the
think
rest of
so.
it. So,
I think so. Labor has shown people why people should change their own minds
hmm
because of their own actions, especially in the councils and stuff where a lot of girls have been abused and
hmm
under their councils, and they have hidden those people and not really investigated, not really stood up for the people of the north,
yeah,
and consistently they have shown themselves to not actually care for the working class people, and actually shown themselves how much they despise the working class people, which I've seen with a lot of university graduate lefties, as they call themselves, or
yeah.
we call them, or whatever they
Well,
identify as. I mean, there's a lot of they despise the working class people. They are the ones who are looking down upon them, and I think so. That's why people's mind have been changing, which is good. There shouldn't be one side or the other side. They should just be, pro what their needs are,
mhm.
or what the needs of the community are. But how did you end up with SDP?
So sorry, I'll continue the story. Yeah,
Hmm.
I sorry. Yeah, and then again, it's all these revelations, right? From learning about God to learning about Tories to learning about the Labour Party and how that operates. I saw some I'm not going to go into it, but I saw some very skeptical things, I would say, in the Labour Party. I'm
Hmm.
sure the party's the same. Sometimes you see things that you just go, well, that's not right, and it was the same kind of stuff you can imagine in any power group that goes on. And it just unfolded over time, and then obviously Brexit happened, and that was the
Hmm.
big one. I
Yeah.
can't deny Brexit was a huge one. Again, very naive I was. I had the opinion of, well, if all three big parties agree on the European Union be a good thing, it must be, right?
Hmm.
And obviously that was stupid. So yeah, I remember one night watching Question Time. Ed Miliband was on there with Nigel Farage, as I remember correctly, and there was a question made about immigration. And the Tories had this promise that we were going to get the numbers down to tens of thousands. Now,
mm,
immigration had been a big thing in my life for a while because I'd realised just how many people hated it. They hated immigration
mm,
policy. And unfortunately, as a result of that, they hated a lot of immigrants. And that
mm,
was horrible for me to witness as someone who is proudly not that way and wants to try and treat people as equal as possible
mm,
all the time. But you realise that the immigration system that had been forced upon people was not working, and it was just making life worse, not just for the people who were already here, but the migrants that were coming into in a lot of these poor communities were not welcomed, you know.
mm,
And I remember one day getting on the bus, and all of a sudden the driver didn't speak English very well, and then it was
mm,
the next day and the day after that, and I looked into what had happened, and essentially there was a group of bus drivers. They went to their employer asking for a pay rise. They got told to shove it, and they were quickly replaced with bus drivers from
mm,
Eastern Europe who would do the job for the minimum wage that they were offering. Do you know what I mean? So
mm,
you notice that, and obviously you think about all these different people who are going to interact with these bus drivers and what negative opinions they're going to have. It's just not good for society. So I was always on the page of, which is not very in the Labour Party at the time, I was always on the page of we need to lower immigration because it needs to be more reasonable. And then, sure enough, this question time debate happened, and Nigel
mm,
Farage said something. He
mm,
said, you cannot lower immigration to the levels that you require while we are in the EU, right?
mm.
And now I wasn't clever enough at the time to understand how that worked from a policy perspective. I'd never looked
Yeah,
into it, but I was intuitive enough to realize the responses from the people on the panel knew that he was right.
yeah,
And so what I did is I spent an entire night researching the EU. I went down the rabbit hole, and the next
mm,
day I woke up as a Brexiteer. And
yeah,
I was quickly persona non grata within the Labour movement. They hated me for it, and a number of other people got it in the neck as well. And we went through the election, obviously the year before. So now it was Corbyn. Corbyn was
mm,
in play. I voted for Jeremy Corbyn in 2017. I'm ashamed to
mm.
say, and by 2018.
I said that he was a good man on Twitter, and I still hate
Yeah.
myself for saying that.
Yeah, I didn't know. Again, I was naive. I was stupid. I want
Yeah,
to say I was young, but whatever. I was naive, and I went through the whole Brexit debate. I was thrilled that we left the European. Well, we voted to leave anyway, the European Union.
yeah.
And again, I had people calling me worse than scum. These are like people within the Labour Party, the people within the Labour movement who I was friends with.
Yeah,
I still
because
touch with.
people don't understand that Labour Party and most of the Labour Party members and stuff. Not most of the members, but most of the activists that they have now and their MPs and stuff. They are the new elites, right?
Hmm.
So they the things. This is why they don't connect with the working class, because they don't understand the problems of the working class. They
Yeah.
don't understand how their policies are actually affecting them.
Hmm.
Like you said, is the labor, just changing the whole labor of that area,
Hmm.
and putting the working class in disadvantage.
Yeah.
But it doesn't affect them. They're
Yeah.
not those people are not coming into their areas where they live.
Yeah.
They're not affecting their white collar jobs and stuff like that, so it doesn't affect them as much.
Yeah. And
They
that,
can still be the higher management and stuff, which the jobs that they usually get.
Yeah, and that disconnect continued, but I did remain within the Labour movement as a little bit of an outsider with a few others. But then obviously we started hearing about the anti-Semitism and
Mm, mm,
the real issue. Now, I'll be honest with you, I witnessed some crazy stuff within the Labour youth movement anyway that was
mm,
just out there, right? But
yeah,
that was just par for the course. You kind of got on with it. But when it
mm,
when it came to people literally coming up to you and asking like, can I get this dealt with and stuff, and the party just going silent, I was very disturbed by it.
yeah,
And what happened in the end was, essentially it was in 2018. I was talking to a friend of mine. um, Now I've always been a massive fan of George Orwell.
mm,
One of my favorite books of all time is Animal
yeah,
Farm, and you
mm,
can see why when I tell the rest of the story.
mm,
But obviously, another one of his classics is 1984.
yeah,
And I was talking to a woman who I'd been friends with 7 years at this point. We were very close as friends. And Guido Fawkes, the right wing media outlet,
Yeah.
They posted a tweet, or maybe it was a Facebook post, I can't remember, but social media post out, and it was the video of Jeremy Corbyn calling Hamas and Hezbollah his friends,
Yeah.
right? And I showed her this video. And at
Hmm.
this point, I wasn't really involved as much anymore. I kind of got a distance from it because I wasn't welcome, and my views
Yeah.
were kind of very, very. I'd looked into it philosophically. I realised I was blue Labour, and that was just not the party anymore.
Hmm.
And yeah, I showed her this video, and her response was, "It's a Guido Fawkes. That's a right wing smear."
Yeah.
And
So
I
they're
said no, but
completely ignoring the message.
and I said
Completely ignoring the message.
And I said, no, but the video is Jeremy Corbyn saying this. And she
Hmm.
said it again. And just that quote came to me, the party told you to reject the
Yeah.
evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final,
Exactly.
most essential command. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, I am living in a George
Hmm.
Orwellian world here. I couldn't believe it. And it was in that moment I just said, and I was thinking about it for a while, I'm not going to lie,
Hmm.
but I was like, I'm leaving. And that was it.
Yeah.
And I left, and I didn't look back. And it's hard, by the way, to leave political parties. It's hard to leave any group, but
Yeah.
I find it particularly hard because they just cut you off. Even the people who you're supposedly friends with, that network, you just disappears. You get left
Hmm.
behind. And sometimes you get attacked, right? And
Oh
it,
yeah.
it is very difficult. But I did feel free getting away from it. You don't realize how much it burdens you when you're on
You
the
know,
treadmill. It's
in
like
areas,
when
in
you're running on a
areas,
sorry, go on.
yeah, gone.
I was just going to say, do you know when you're running on a treadmill and
Hmm.
you get off the treadmill and you feel light and floaty, because obviously your body's calming down. You
Yeah.
don't actually realize when you're on the treadmill how much stress you're putting your body through. And I say
Hmm.
the same thing about when you get involved in activism and stuff like that. Until you actually stop, the stress is
Yeah.
relieved from you. You don't realize how stressed you actually are, how unhappy you are until you get
Hmm.
out of it. And then I was like, wow. Even though they were giving me some of them were giving me a bit of abuse for things I'd said and things I'd done, and leaving them and quitting them and being a traitor, all the rest of it. It was just a breather, and I just said I'm done with politics. I'm absolutely done with it.
Yeah.
I'm never going back into it. And I was just that was it. And I think the reason why it stopped quite quickly and they didn't follow me around, I guess, is because I didn't jump into another party. I just said I was done,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
was it. I was gone. And then obviously the incident with Twitter happened, where, as I said,
Hmm.
I got doxxed, and I just said I'm done with that as well, and I just
Hmm.
switched off from everything. It was an amazing, weird change in life, but I then went through COVID. I acquired a bit of a medical condition, which I'm chronic health condition I'm long term dealing with,
Hmm.
and in these things change your life, right? And so
Yeah.
all of a sudden priorities shift. And I just remember, I think I want to say it was during lockdown. I can't remember. It must have been 2020-ish. But anyway, I was bored, lost,
Hmm.
angry, feeling despair about the way in which, because obviously COVID opened a lot of people's eyes to how poorly we were being treated as a country and all the rest of it. And I stumbled across a book. The book was called Despised: Why the Modern Left Loathes the Working Class by Paul Embry.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I just went, wow, this book is literally describing the experiences I had been through.
Hmm.
All the thoughts that I had in my subconscious, that they aren't really left wing. They aren't actually for the working class at all. But they say
Yeah.
they are. So I keep believing they are, but they're not. And Paul, as much as I really respect the guy and I rate him entirely, has stayed in the Labour Party, I guess in the dream that one day it could be changed. I
Yeah.
just realised it couldn't, and it was done.
Yeah.
And there's too many crazy woke Marxist types in there who, like Jordan Peterson says, don't focus on changing the world, focus on tidying your room.
No, but
Those people
this is the
dominate that party
problem.
now.
This is the problem with labor, right? So I think so. It has always been the problem with labor, with being linked to Marxism, right? So people try to dress it up. You can dress it up as much as you want, but I think so it's a bad coding problem. Like Marxism is a bad coding problem, and no matter what iteration you have of it down the line, is going to create bad outcomes,
Mhm.
right? And eventually what happened with labor was as well that they didn't just have Marxism. They thought let's include Islamism as well
Mhm.
in our midst. and that's where the anti-Semitism went through the roof, because these two are like bedfellows in a lot of things. Even with the problems within Palestine, the PLO was a Marxist organization. There's a reason why they support each other, you know but
Hmm.
yeah, I think so. Labor has that problem, and just like Tories that need to be destroyed for the country to be saved, Labor also need to be destroyed for
Hmm.
the country's, basically, the soul to you know be recaptured.
Yeah. And I just felt that, like I say, I just thought they were too grand for what was required to
Hmm.
fix the country. They were interested in fixing the world and not in fixing our streets. And
Hmm.
I just got very disillusioned with it all. And I was very angry at the country at the time. And I wanted to get back in touch with politics, but I didn't know how, because there was no party that just seemed to resonate with and get the problem. Do you know what I mean? If I
Hmm.
wanted to just do an anti-immigration thing, I could have voted Brexit Party or something, and
Yeah.
but I didn't, and I did, I thought about all these different things I could have get involved with, but I didn't. I stayed away from them, and then I was just watching one of my favorite YouTube shows, Trigonometry, and
Hmm.
a guy came on there called William Clouston, and
Yeah.
he spoke. It was one of the best talks I'd ever witnessed in my life. Honestly, it was like you just found someone who was talking to me, and he was
Yeah.
explaining things in ways that politicians avoid now. It wasn't in
Hmm.
sound bites, it was in clear understanding of, you know, this isn't an easy fix. We've had
Yeah.
decades and decades of mass globalized neoliberalism, and
Hmm.
it's ruined our society. And he went through the idea that, we should be building, um, you know, policies around family first, not
Hmm.
individualism, not selfishness. We
Yeah.
should be building policies around communities. And that's what spoke
Hmm.
to me. I listen to my nana and granddad, and they'll talk to me about how they know every person on the street. They've got stories about how, growing up and living in their communities, they knew every single person. And most people nowadays would be lucky if they knew the names of both next door neighbours. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I just realised that we have a complete arrogance that we as a society think for the first time in human history we can change our stars, when we're actually more chained to our biology than we think. We're just
Yeah.
impressive monkeys. We're nothing special in that regard. And we
Hmm.
have to be grounded by the reality of our situation and accept that we are limited in some ways. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Acknowledging our limitations, acknowledging what the limitations we can break down, but also being proud of the fact that we understand ourselves better than other animals do, for example. And
Hmm.
so when I listened back to stories of my I'm obsessed with my, family history and stuff. And
Hmm.
you listen back to it and you think about how all these people lived. And I just think, are we doing this right? Are we? Are we really meant to
Hmm.
just, I mean, I remember in the Brexit, referendum and the debate, and I mean, the Brexit referendum, for those who forget, was actually quite, other than Joe Cox's horrendous murder, which I don't
Hmm.
think was actually related to. I don't think I could
No.
pin that as part of the campaign. But what I'm saying is that other than that one horrific incident, the actual campaign itself was relatively timid, especially
Hmm.
compared to what happened afterwards. Afterwards was an absolute disaster in terms of how a country speaks to each other. And you realise just how much loathing certain people had
Hmm.
for working class people in general, or especially the ones who voted the wrong way, as they would see it. But what I realised when I was talking to these liberal Remainer types, who are middle class and so on, the kind of person, very
Yeah.
much the James O'Briens of the world.
Hmm.
You'd speak to them about your home, and you'd realize that quite quickly they were talking about the literal four walls that surround them when they sleep at night. When I talk about
Yeah.
home, I talk about
Yeah.
not even where I live now, I talk about where I grew up, the community I grew up in, the people who formed part of your existence, the
Hmm.
people you interacted with, the corners, the curves, the streets, the housing, everything about that location was my
Yeah.
home. I still get excited when I go home now, and I don't even live there right now. My home is my community where I grew up, and when you realise there's that such disconnect between how certain people see the world and others see the world, you realise that we're actually talking across from each other in a lot of the respects from this. And it was the first time I'd ever heard that encapsulated into party policy, and it was with William Clouston in the SDP.
Yeah, I mean, I have talked with William Clouston as well. And there are things that we agree and disagree upon. Obviously, they would be hard to never agree with anyone on completely. Um, but I find him really, I find him to be a proper Englishman, right? And that is important. That is the best description I can give of him, to be honest. Um, Someone who doesn't like populism, right? And this is the main reason when I am more at home probably with the Tory party in general, right? But they have they're proven for a very long time that they are just that they are not what they seem, right? That they are not what they say they are,
Hmm.
and they are trapped in the same liberal globalist, mindset.
Yeah.
And it's in labor, I found out pretty quickly. I thought like, oh, maybe I'll give labor a try. Labor, I found out pretty quickly, were even worse than Tories in that respect.
Yeah.
um because during the time of Brexit, I was like, I would take both positions when I was talking with people, depending on what position they had, just to see, like, um what position I should have, maybe, like, just play the devil's advocate for the sake of it sometimes. But I changed my mind on EU the more I got to know about Polish politics, right? Because my wife is from Poland, so I've been with her for 13 years, and I've been going back and forth to Poland. And what I see EU actually doing to Poland, and not just Poland, to Hungary and other places as well, how they subvert their elections and their sovereignty, right? How they act as a mafia, basically. Oh, you agree upon those things, or we will withhold your funds. That sort of mentality,
Hmm.
right? That just completely, I was like, well, th- it's just undemocratic. It's not in your favor, sort of a thing. It's more of a mafia, and that just turned me away from them. I was like, instinctively, I had an aversion of them.
Well, I
And
remember. Oh, sorry,
especially
go on.
the anti-British attitude, that's what, like, really turned me off. And the fact that and this is actually the fact that turned me off from the liberal sort of people as well, because I was like, well, there's a organization which is very much anti-British, right? They try whenever they can to, be in that sort of person, that have that sort of a view, but you agree with them,
Hmm.
right? So you are electing to hate your own.
Hmm.
So my only connection with this country is the love of this country. This is why I came to this country. I didn't come here to make my life better in that sense. Like, my life was a lot better before. I came here to be British, right? So I can't be associated with people who hate Britain so much that they would rather side with the enemy.
Hmm.
And this is the reason why it, like, and then I wasn't, like, involved in anything politically,
Yeah.
because I wasn't that much. I'm still not that much politically, involved. I'm not really a political animal. I'm more of a philosophical side of things.
Yeah.
And
Well,
like you said, like, some major events sometimes happen in your life, and I was diagnosed with cancer 2.5 years ago,
oh wow.
and that changed my perspective as well,
Bound to.
because
Yes.
that switched me on, and in a way that I was like, well, I never expected this something like this could happen to me, right?
Hmm.
So now, touch wood, it hasn't come back yet. It was removed, and the tumor hasn't come back yet for 2.5 years, and hopefully it never will. But it just gave me that urgency,
Hmm.
and showed me, like, well, my country is in trouble, and if I want to help, and if I want to safeguard the future of Britain, I need to act, right? And I need to do as much as I can. And that was a major motivation for me. And SDP at that moment sounded the only place where I might not agree with everything, but there's a room for discussion,
Hmm.
right? There's sort of like an humble approach where ideas can be put forward and the ideas can be taken on board regardless of where they're coming from. And also the stance of William Clouston hating populism, right? Because I hate populism, and I agree with him that politics should be boring. Politics should be about policy and policy making, and it shouldn't be about personalities at all. So that was the reason. Who knows? I might stay within SDP in the future, or might not stay. But for this time and for this moment, they seem to be better than everyone else in translating that and also putting out the best foot forward as a Brit. And yeah, I think so
Well,
that would be sort of my reason why I joined.
if he, yeah, if he, I'll be honest with you. I don't see it that way, and I've never heard William say that. But if he genuinely doesn't think it's about personalities, I'd love to hear him explain why we have Rod Little representing us so often, because he
Hmm,
is a massive personality.
yeah.
But yeah,
No,
I
I
mean,
meant like not just about personalities.
yeah,
It's not
I,
like your party is not person centered. No, it's not
look,
just about like one man band.
Look, some people, yeah. Oh, I get. Oh, sorry about the Farage thing. Yeah, I get that.
Hmm,
Or the Richard Tice thing. Now, yes,
hmm,
I do get that. Yeah, and
yeah,
about yeah, and if in yeah, I absolutely agree. Then in that case, because it's style and substance, not style
yeah,
over substance. You've got to have both, right?
yeah.
And for me, I get. I think the STP is a little bit populist. They are a little bit.
Hmm,
There are
hmm,
some policies in there that are complete wedge issues where, and I
hmm,
love them, that we stand proudly on the side of certain issues and
hmm,
unashamedly free speech party. I'll just say
yeah,
this, right? I've canvassed I've canvassed all over this country, right? In particular, the north of England and south of
hmm,
Scotland. I've done a horrendous amount of canvassing over my time,
hmm,
and you will lucky if you will find anybody who says they are not pro free speech, right?
yeah,
But when you actually ask them what they think that means, most people I've come across don't really know what free speech means. They always have
yeah.
caveats they want to attach to it, right? The
Hmm,
SDP doesn't. I've never seen any hint of that at all, and I think it's great that we sit there and say, yeah, we are pro free speech and we don't
hmm,
mind that people will disagree on stuff. We are
yeah,
adults, we should be mature, and we should be
yeah.
okay to actually disagree and move
Hmm,
on. And I also love the fact that, we are a party that is one member, one vote. I have
yeah.
as many votes as William Clouston does, our
Hmm,
leader. I think that's fantastic, right? I also love the fact that we are unashamedly pro apprenticeship schemes.
hmm,
Which if you canvass the country now, you will hear a lot of people saying we've probably gone too far down the university well hole, and we
yeah.
need to get more skills based trades going. I love the
Hmm,
fact that we are pro building housing, because if
yeah.
you ask people around the country, they are desperate to see the housing market sorted out, and the other parties just have gimmicks. We are the only party I've ever heard speak honestly about marrying up a housing strategy with its immigration plan. Because guess
Hmm,
what? Migrants need houses too, right? They
hmm,
need somewhere to live. And it's supply and demand, baby. That's the only thing you need to
yeah.
know about that. But
But
I've
this
never
is
heard
the
anyone say it. The Labour
this
Party
is
will talk.
the
Sorry, go on.
this is the thing about SDP that attracted me in the first place is the groundwork, right? The
Yeah.
policy making and the groundwork and the research that is going behind it, which I haven't found with Reform, even though I wanted to support them because,
Hmm.
like I said, like my natural home is probably within the Tory party, because of whatever my perspective,
Hmm.
but but Reform, I quickly found out like it was all gimmicks, right? And I've seen their
Yeah.
policies. It doesn't. There is no grounding in reality. And SDP seems like okay, maybe some policies might have some issues, but it shows that a groundwork has been done, which means it can be improved upon,
Hmm.
and it can be adapted
Absolutely.
when it is faced. And that is what I like that they haven't just gone for, or like just pick personalities which are big personalities and push our party that way, right? And become a one agenda party, right?
Hmm.
Just have one agenda and just go for it,
Hmm.
which is, they have done the groundwork. And then obviously you have to include people who are popular, right,
Well,
who
well,
have some sort of face out there and stuff to attract people. But the groundwork is needed first, which is what they have done.
what I loved about William Clouston when he was speaking on trigonometry for the first time, and I heard him say it, was he turned around and said, "We have a new declaration, which is our
Hmm.
which all the policies are up for debate. Every policy in the SDP is
Yeah,
up for debate, but what isn't up for debate is our philosophy, and we have a
yeah.
political philosophy called a new declaration, and
Hmm.
everybody subscribes to that philosophy when they join." And William
Hmm.
Clouston said, "And if you don't like that, then please don't join us." And it was
Yeah.
refreshing to hear a politician say that too. To say that, look,
Hmm.
we actually have what we want and we want to protect that because, to your point earlier, Momus, the
Hmm.
Labour Party have lost their way. Does anybody nowadays think the Labour Party represents the working class of this country?
No,
Of
they
course not.
don't represent
Does
themselves. So
does anybody think that the Conservatives actually
no,
represent conservative people in this country?
no,
Not at all, right? Does anybody think the Liberal Democrats are liberal or democratic? You know what I mean?
no.
They're not, and this is the point, right? These parties have lost their way, and that's the problem. Whereas the SDP, our political philosophy is very clearly outlined. All of our policies have to
Hmm.
go through and be double checked. Are we literally feeding into our political philosophy? Are we embodying the values we've already set out, or is this something different? And if it is something different, we have to refine it to make sure we stay on brand,
And
on
this is
message.
important. Laying out a political philosophy or being knowing of yourself is very important, because the forces that are now that we are fighting within this country, the extremists, the radical forces that we are fighting against, whether, like, they are obviously, in my view, they're wrong, but they are knowing of themselves. That's why they have the support that they have, because there's no doubt over there, right? Like, they know exactly what they're doing. They have a
Mhm.
plan. you know this is why they get the support. Like, this is why the Islamists are getting the support, and this is why the communists are getting the support, um but however little that they have, but because they are, like, knowing of themselves, and because the Tory party and Labour party, you just don't know what they stand for. This is why we have dejection in the whole of the country, which
Mhm.
is why parties like SDP are important, because they're doing the right thing. They're saying, okay, this is who we are and this is what we stand for, and every policy that we have will mirror this philosophy.
Mhm. But it's also a cry out for the fact that um, most people feel unrepresented in this country by
Mm,
the other
mm.
mainstream parties. You have to remember that we even have polling data that backs this up now. You can see just how out of touch the parties are, even with their own voters. Never mind
Yeah,
the rest of the voters in this country who vote for other parties.
yeah.
Just how out of whack they are with them. I mean, the SDP, I mark it as the only truly UK-wide conservative party,
Mm-hmm,
because our values are conservative. Whether you
mm-hmm.
people misinterpret conservatism to basically mean Tories and whatever the Tory party is
Yeah,
promoting. Awful lot of
no,
liberals in the Tory party, awful lot of liberals,
yeah,
market liberals
all
as
of
well,
them,
market
most of
liberals,
them.
yeah. And this is
Yeah,
what's problem with the reform, right? Reform are basically the Tories, but they're going to be tough on immigration.
yeah,
That's all I can work out from it.
yeah.
They're still very free market, which if you ask people around the country what they just want their country. We live in this world right now,
Mm.
which basically exists as a sort of temporary economic zone where you happen to
Yeah,
interact with on a day-to-day basis. That is not what people signed up for. This is our island home. It's
yeah.
our home. It matters that the people who've been here for centuries and
Mm.
centuries have a place to call their own, right? And the problem that we have is that with this mass market liberalism, mass corporate capitalism, and so on, is that it's literally become a winner takes all scheme where, as
Mhm.
Margaret Thatcher said, there is no society. That is not how most people live their lives.
No.
Most people actually would like to see their community help each other out.
Yeah.
help those in need, lift people up, actually lean on each other, rely on each other, and build a better tomorrow for all that
And
live
you know
there.
what when you said that people like O'Brien or people like that, when you ask them what their home is, that they would define the four walls they live in.
Hmm.
You know what? The reason why that is the fault of liberalism and is the fault of materialistic outlook.
The key
Uh,
words there, by the way, being at that particular moment in time. They could just get a new home tomorrow. That's the
yeah,
way they see it. Yeah.
exactly. So they only value material things through materialistic point of views,
Yeah.
right? They don't understand that these things are actually deep,
Hmm.
and it doesn't matter whether you believe in a god or not. I have been leaning more and more towards Christianity because I think so. It's a great thread that Britain has that they've been losing, and that's a way to get it back. But whether you believe in Christianity or not, whether you believe in God or not, there's a deep something deeply spiritual about people. And when they define these terms as love, as relationships, as home, they're more than the person that you're defining.
Hmm.
They're more than the materials that are in front of you. Home is more than that. And because Tory party and the Labour Party is filled with different levels of liberals who are materialistic liberals, they don't instinctively understand these concepts.
Hmm.
When a Brexiteer is saying, I want my home, I want my country back, they don't understand what they mean. They just think that they mean that I don't want immigrants here. I don't like it's not that. It's the connection they want back.
Yeah,
You know?
and most people would agree. I think if you asked anybody in the last 20 years, other than gay marriage, have we made any progress whatsoever as a
No,
country?
it's
Most
only
people would.
regression.
Most people would say no. We have lost our way. You look around.
Mm,
The young people today feel completely lost. They
yeah.
feel like they're not proud of their country. They're not proud of their society. They're not proud of themselves. They're taught,
Mm,
especially if they're young white boys, they're taught to
yeah.
basically hate themselves and be ashamed of what they are. It's
Hmm.
incredible the arrogance with which this is approached, but it's also incredible the lack of evidence is used to back it up.
Yeah.
For example, I've made this point repeatedly, right? If you look just historically over civilizational history, right, the biggest
Mm,
determinant factor on how a civilization, whether it's going to progress or get worse, is how you raise young men. Young
yeah.
men are the most profitable commodity as a person that you could
Mm,
possibly have in a society. They're also potentially the most dangerous and damaging. It is
yeah.
incredibly important that we raise young men up to have responsibilities, to have discipline, to be able to look after not just themselves, but a family as well, to give
Yeah.
them respect. That is required, right? And we do none of those things. We just say to them, do what you want, good luck, right?
I
And
know.
it's the same with young girls now. We're seeing the outcomes of this, where the dating market for them is absolutely horrendous to the point
Mm,
where they don't understand why society has basically rejected not just them, but many of their friends in a lot of sense from what their mothers went through, where you
mm,
would talk about settling down with a boy and having a family and so on, or their grandparents' generations. I said, they don't recognize that at all. They feel rejected. Um, they don't feel what is the word that's sort of validated. They don't
yeah.
feel they're without purpose, right? They feel lost. I've witnessed this myself. In my work, there are so many women who,
Mm,
when they get to sort of mid 30ish, start cutting back on their hours, start looking for other opportunities in terms of employment because they don't enjoy it anymore. Because
mm,
they were told just get as much money as you can together, and then they sit there and feel lost, like they don't know what they're missing in their
yeah.
life. And unfortunately, what they're missing is a family. We have a
Yeah.
natural instinct to have families, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, we have an entire society set up telling kids that not only is that not the best thing to do, the economy will never allow you to do it. because
Yeah.
all we do is reward whoever the highest paying person is. And the highest paying person is the person who hasn't got the quote unquote burden of having to financially support a family. So all of a sudden, your lifestyle, it's actually negatively impacted, and people are not stupid. They adapt to these situations. You know, our society right now, you look at our demographics. If it wasn't for mass immigration, our demographics would be looking horrendous. We'd be looking at
Yeah.
extinction rates, right? But the
Hmm.
point is, in Britain, right? But the point is, nobody other than, I think it's Miriam Cates, I believe, in Parliament, has
Yeah.
raised this up. This should be a massive red warning flag to everyone. What is
But they
wrong with
know
our
this,
country? What is
Basil.
wrong
They
with it?
know this.
What is
They
wrong?
know this.
What is wrong with it, though, when our own children are not wanting to settle down and have families, unlike every generation that came before them? Why is something so messed up with this generation? And yet people pretend like it's absolutely fine. It's insane. And this is another reason why I'm in the SDP. One of the few parties that actually say we should incentivize people to have families. We should
Hmm.
make it easier for them to have families.
Yeah.
We are not that different from our ancestors. We just have better tools. They needed families. We do too. We really,
Yeah.
really do.
I think so. All of these politicians actually know this, especially the Tory party. They know this, but they have agreed in their head that the only way to fix this is not to incentivize, because our economy for some reason cannot support it, is to keep on having immigrants, right? Because to keep that supply coming in one way or another. This is why they're never going to crack down on immigration, because they know that there's a problem with decline in population. But we have like it, a lot of these failures, I think so, a lot of people are going to come to this realization sooner or later, that liberalism had a lot of faults, and what we are witnessing now is unchecked liberalism, where it has rampaged through the society, and it has not been stopped at all, and it's just gone overboard. Especially like what you were saying with women, is it's a fault of liberal feminism, where it has no control. It's just like fourth wave feminism, whatever it is. It's just destroying everything to serve a purpose which is against the benefit of the women themselves, right?
Mhm.
So it's working against its own core demographic. But anyways, we have gone over the hour mark now. Um, so we're going to conclude our conversation now. But in saying, before we conclude that though, I want you to say a few words about the spaces that you've been holding on Twitter, because they're very useful. I would urge everyone to go and get involved in the spaces that Basil is holding on Twitter, um, around SDP and other ones as well. It's a good way for people to communicate. They can drop in and drop out. But yeah, go ahead, like talk a bit about that as well.
Yeah, no problem whatsoever. So, yeah, I host Twitter Spaces. Spaces, for those who aren't aware, are basically like they're kind of like radio channels. They're like
Hmm.
phone calls, almost open to the public. Essentially, people can listen in. You can have any number of listeners that can tune in, but you only have a set number of speaker slots, roughly about 12, depending on a few little things. And essentially, what you do is you pick a topic. Can be absolutely anything you want, and people can come up, say what they want, have a conversation. Sometimes it gets a bit heated, bit of debate and stuff, which is great fun as long as it's controlled. And I always try to keep my spaces polite, where people can discuss things openly, and get their point across and be heard, but also be challenged. In a good mannered way, and that's what I think makes a good space, and that's what I try to do. So yeah, I host spaces. My hashtag is my handle is Basil Basil underscore TGMD. That's Tango Golf Mike Delta, and it's obviously Basil underscore the Great Mouse Detective, right? So that was my original idea from long ago. I do apologise if people wince at that. I do too when I say it. But the point is, I host spaces. More than welcome to follow me. You'll see them flag up in your feed. You can come along and say anything you want. In the space, and we can have discussions about it. And obviously, I'm hosting with it being election season. on the SDP, and we're talking about party policy. We're talking about how we joined the SDP. We're talking about what just the kind of things we've been talking about today, right, on this podcast. And
Hmm.
it's great fun, and people see it as very therapeutic. But it's not just politics. I do spaces about. I did one the other week on chronic health issues where people wanted to
Hmm.
tell their stories of what they've been through. I've done one before on. I've got a true crime space that I do every week.
Hmm.
We're on to episode 4 now. We've had professionals on, even telling us about
Nice.
true crime stories. I do that with my co-host Mel every Wednesday. You can see that if you come to my channel. Yeah, so there's lots and lots of cool things going on Twitter. Space is a fantastic format to get to meet
Hmm.
people. I've got some big ones coming up with. I've got actually Member of Parliament coming on Friday. I've got some big ones with the parties coming up. Reformer coming on. I've got the SDP coming on, and I've got other Labour Party have now offered someone to come on. So yeah, there's lots and lots and lots of big spaces that I'm going to be hosting, and everyone is more than welcome to get involved.
Amazing. Okay, thank you for coming on today, and thank you for talking to us. And I hope everyone enjoyed listening today, and I'll catch you all next time.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.